We need a big on air thingy.
Yo, we are live. What's up? Can you guys see in the chat?
Oh, I see a commercial.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep, because you're not the main guy no more. I'm in control of it, and everything is messed up.
I saw something.
All right. Yeah, I think we're there. Ed, go ahead and give us a quick
check. Mic check 1, 2. Ed here. I think it's working.
Yeah, I think.
Yep.
I'm opening up chat now so I can at least see what we're doing. Everything's my fault, felt. Uh-oh. What else can I mess up?
All right, so you guys are not going to be having the pleasure of seeing my ugly grill tonight because I'm not showing video. I'm a place with low bandwidth. Just so you know, Rob is the man in charge. Him and Ed are going to be handling this, and I'm just going to be like the guy in the back of the class.
Yeah. This is a disaster. Derek never allowed to go on vacation again.
Are you on vacation now?
I am at the beach right now. I am, but I do have a house sitter, so nobody have any ideas.
Got to get some of those amps.
Yep. Show up and you might not leave. I've got a big place in the back that you can be buried.
All right, so Derek, it's your turn to start it off, I think.
You sure you want me to do it? I'll be glad to, but okay, I'll do it.
I can do it.
I can do it if you want. That's fine.
All right.
All right, I'll start the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2. 12 Volt Talk, episode 38. Using car audio in the house. In the hizzy, into somewhere. What's going on, guys? This is Derek from Williston Audio Labs here at willistonaudio.com. Got my good buddy, Mr. Vega, and also Ed from Sparked Innovations and ShowtimeSPL. What's going on, Rob?
Yo, what's up? HiFiVega here, youtube.com/HiFiVega, and we're joined by our first ever third chair guest host, Ed from Sparked Innovations. What's up, Ed?
Hey, I feel honored to be the first one. Am I the first? If I am, I'm honored.
Yeah, for sure. You're the first third chair. Now, we've had Craig guest host once, but we've never had a third chair host.
Awesome. I'm ready to have some fun. Had a stressful day, so this is my relaxation time.
Excellent. So let's just jump right into it. We're going to talk about how to use car audio in the house. I think Derek's had a video covering this. We know Ed has recently had a video in the past few months covering this. So what are power sources that we like to use in that? What's your favorite?
Who's starting? Derek?
I'll start real quick. Sure. So, as Rob mentioned, Ed and I and several other people on YouTube have done videos about this. And we get lots of questions from viewers saying, I've got this 12 volt equipment. How do I use it in my house? So the answer really varies based on what type of equipment you're going to use. Obviously, if you're going to use a head unit, you can get something pretty inexpensive. If you're going to hook up a 5,000 watt amplifier, then you have to go a different route. But there are several options, and we're going to kind of go over some of the ones kind of high level of what we have used. But we'll start off with using car audio specific 12 volt power supplies versus like the DIY stuff. Ed, have you messed around with any of the, like server or PC power supplies and use those for your 12 volt equipment?
Yeah, I was actually using one for a while as like a test bench power supply until I can't show it here. It's on my bench is behind the camera, but now I have a really nice adjustable voltage, adjustable current lab type power supply that I use. So I got rid of that thing. I mean, they're okay. They work for small stuff, but they're not ideal for me, And then there's the other bigger ones. It's like if you're going to run powerful amps and whatnot. The lab power supply, I think, is 10 amps. So to get a high amperage lab type power supply, you're going to spend a lot of money. I didn't have that kind of money, so I only have a 10 amp unit there. I wish I could show that. I might be able to swing the camera around. But those, the kind of computer, the PC power supplies, the ones that I've used were always the ones you get for like $20, $25. And I had issues with noise with those, and I just didn't like them. They're I guess you could say cumbersome and kind of weird to work with the barrier strips and all this and that. And I'm just not a fan of them personally, but they work. You can use them.
Yeah. Yeah, you can definitely use the computer power supplies, and I've used them before quite a bit. But like you said, I have a Cosell 120 amp power supply that I use for everything, and it's simpler than the DIY solution. But if you're doing this on a budget and you're doing it at home, the Dell power supply is a pretty good option.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of information on Google. If you do a Google search for server power supplies and RC, like remote controls, because what's happened is these guys who charge these large lithium batteries look for a way to have a 12-volt power supply to charge up those banks. This was years ago. And they found that, a lot of times companies are getting rid of servers, and most of these servers, these big high powered servers people use in large corporations, they have huge redundant power supplies. In a lot of cases, they're 15 or 1600 watt power supplies, and they all have really large 12-volt rails. Well, in addition to having, maybe 50 up to over 100 amps on the 12-volt rail, they can also be modified so that you can put a potentiometer on them and adjust the voltage up to around 15 volts. And they've got, like I said, if you just do a Google search, and we'll try to put a link in the video description that'll take you right to it. But they give you the specific models. IBM has got some, and Dell has some, and there's some other ones. But Rob and I have searched on eBay, and we found that you can get, in some cases, you can get one or two of these for like $20 or $30 each. They're pretty inexpensive, and somebody who's willing to roll up their sleeves and do a little DIY, then that's the most cost-effective way to do this with something a little bit more powerful. If you just need a head unit, then obviously what Ed said, just getting a cheap $20 one you can use. But if you're trying to do amplifiers or you're trying to do a whole system, then you obviously need something that's got more juice on that 12-volt rail.
And there used to be a company called RD Power that done them. That didn't you review one of their power supplies, Derek? That were using the servers.
Yeah, so it was a small server power supply by RD Power, and it actually had an adjustable voltage, like Ed was just talking about his lab supply, and it had a display that told you the current draw, which was also really cool because how much current was being pulled from your source when you were using that. And they unfortunately went out of business. I sent him an email the other day, a couple weeks ago, and I haven't heard back. I've heard other people say he dropped off of eBay. So that's unfortunate, but that's one option. But Ed, you were going to say something, so I'll shoot it over to you.
I like something you said about if you're willing to put in the work and build something and maybe even get a used piece. And I think that's kind of where I was going with talking about my lab power supply. I needed something ready to go to do everything. So the display on the lab power supplies will tell you the current draw, and it has a coarse and a fine voltage adjustment, so I can get to the 100th of a volt if I really want. And this one's 0 to 30 volts DC. All the connections, everything's ready to go there. If you're trying to go on the cheap route, but you're willing to put the pieces together, voltmeters or the kind of connections you want, instead of just using alligator clips, if you want certain types of terminals to be able to tie into, and you want to do that as a project, then you can save a lot of money. You can get any type of real power supply, and like I say in my video, building up to add more powerful amplifiers, doing battery banks like we do on test bench. I'm sure on your test bench, not all of the energy is coming from the power supply, but from the battery banks also. And if you're willing to do that and keep it expandable and want to do it as a hobby, then the expansion capabilities are almost endless. If you want something right out of the box, though, you might be spending a little bit more money, like my lab power supply. That's a cheap one, and it was like $120.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ed, because that's one of the things about testing amplifiers that you really quickly find out is that if you're testing 100 watts and under, it's not too difficult to find equipment that can handle that. But once you start getting into multiple 100 watts and then multiple thousand, and then trying to keep 14 volts,
Yeah.
that is a big challenge. And like you said, batteries is what I use. I use the excess power D1400s. I have 8 of them, and I have the 60 amp IntelliCharger power supply, keep them charged up. But if you just want to do something smaller, you can start off like I use super caps. You can use those too. There's the IntelliCharger. Yep, that's the that's the 60 amp one too, I think, right? It's pretty big.
I like the guy that designed this. It's me.
That guy did a pretty good job.
Yeah, it works. The new one's out. The new one has some. I didn't have a hand in the redesign, but it's just more compact and whatnot. But these are also, you can parallel them to have multiples if you want to increase. So if you're using this for your project test bench and you get more money and want to expand upon it, you can add these in parallel and keep going up. So they're really cool.
Yeah, the other thing that we need to make sure people understand is the whole 12 volt versus 14 or 14.4 volts. A lot of these server power supplies and a lot of the PC power supplies and things like that, those are literally 12 volts, sometimes 11.8 or 11.9. And the way car amplifiers are made these days, there's not very many of them that are regulated. Most of them are unregulated. So having a higher voltage input is going to give you more power. And in some cases, I've played around with my RD power supply, and if you just turn the knob from 15 volts down to like 11, you can definitely hear the difference in the output. So it's definitely discernible, especially in the larger amps. But that's something you need to realize. If you do go the route with the server power supplies and you're not going to modify it to put out more voltage, then you're not going to get the full output of the amplifier. But don't let that deter you, because this is so cool to be able to use car audio in your home. I don't want to deter anybody.
Yeah, for sure. And you need to keep in mind that when you're using car audio in home, you're usually using much more power than you have in a regular home system, and it's going to be much louder, and it'll get loud with very little volume at that kind of power, in my experience.
And when you say loud, what is the other thing, Rob, that's very loud about using these power supplies at home?
Fans, noisy fans. This can be an issue with many of them. It was an issue on my live stream. I had to come up with a battery bank because I wanted to test an amp, but that power supply sounds like a jet.
Yeah, it can definitely deter from other activities for sure, especially if you're trying to do videos and trying to capture live audio. Linear Power, Ray uses the, gosh, I'm caught here forgetting the brand of the power supply. Rob, do you remember?
No, I don't.
They're regulated, and he's got them all set at 14.4 volt. Oh, Astron, ASTRON. They're the regulated kind. The way to tell the difference between the regulated and the switching is the switching ones you can pick up with one hand. The regulated ones you got to use two hands because they are super big, have a super large transformer inside of them. But he has 7 of the 70 amp models, so you can do your math there and figure out how much current he has available or how many amps he has available. But that's what they use, and actually they have used their car audio amplifiers in studios before, and the studios have set up battery banks like Ed was talking about earlier, and they have solar panels on the roof that keep the batteries trickle charged, and they're like a green quote unquote studio because they don't have to use power to charge up the batteries. And I thought that was a fantastic idea, and I'd love to fix that into the OSS labs one day and have a green lab. What y'all think about going green?
Green paint. That's the easiest way to go green.
Your background is kind of green, Ed.
Yeah.
Are you?
Green light back there.
Is the Hulk going to jump out of there and come get us?
I'm green with envy
Yeah.
over here.
I used to
The
have green, but not anymore.
yeah, I mean, especially for a studio, they're not going to want to use a power supply in their studio. I mean, I don't know how their setup is, but it seems pretty obvious choice for me that they wanted to go with batteries for that very reason. Because as a power supply, even if I guess you can put it in a totally different room, but then you're drawing current, longer wires. So it seems like a clear choice in a studio situation to use battery power.
No
No,
noise.
that's for sure. Now, I don't know if you guys remember, but it's been maybe about a year ago that I did the video of the guy up in Alaska. His name is Paul. He is a auto mechanic, but he had all of those HCCA amplifiers and all the subwoofers and all the speakers in his living room powered by car audio amplifiers. And he has a closet that has all the batteries, and he's got the chargers and everything in there. And I think we added it up, and it's like 11,000 watts of power he was running. And of course, he cranked it up in the video, but you can never really get that full experience because he didn't have a SPL meter in the room or whatever. But still, he says it thumps. I'm sure it does. But that was just an extreme way of doing this. It is possible, but obviously people say, well, why didn't he just use pro amps? He could get the same amount of power with a few outlets and a couple of different 20 amp circuits. But this just shows what you can do if you want to, right? I think it's really cool.
Can I add something technical?
Do it.
Little technical, I guess. So just like in cars with an alternator, you can't get all of your power directly from the alternator. You have some of these builds that are 50, 60,000 watts and more. That's not all coming from the alternator. Time is a factor. So the batteries store energy over time. So your alternator can put some energy as it's not being drawn, it's putting it into the batteries from the alternator to the batteries. So when you're going to draw that power, it takes it from the alternator and the batteries, right? So if you're worried about your outlets, if they're all on 20 amp breakers or whatever, if you do have power supplies and batteries, you can have more power I'm not going to say in theory, it actually is true. You can get more power from car audio in your house than you can from pro audio, home audio equipment if you have a large battery bank where power supplies and battery chargers are charging and keeping those batteries topped off. So technically, yes, you can get more power. It'll eventually drain those batteries and you got to let it rest and charge up just like our cars, but you can do that. So people that do say, why don't you just use pro audio? Well, I want to run 100,000 watts and I don't have the outlets for it. That could be your answer. I don't know who's going to run 100,000 watts in their house, but you can do it.
That's a very good point and something I didn't consider, but you're absolutely right in my opinion. Well, like you said, it's just the fact. I use batteries now with my power supply just to stretch it out and keep a more solid voltage. I could run just off the power supply, but putting the batteries on does help.
Yeah, it smooths it. And that's why in my video, I mentioned that the excess power and telesupply, my favorite setup is using batteries and a power supply / charger like those are. You could switch between the modes. So that while I'm playing, I can be in power supply mode. And then every once in a while, I put in a battery charge mode and just let it run through its routine and top off those batteries. Keeps them healthy. If I wanted to switch to just ultra caps and do away with the batteries, then I can keep it in power supply mode. It'll just be a constant voltage the whole time. I don't have to charge them up any certain routine like batteries. But they don't have the reserve capacity, I guess batteries do. So it all depends on your power level. And like you were saying, studios, if you want to run quiet, you can turn off all the power supplies and then just have them in charge mode and charge up your batteries after a while if you don't want to hear all the fans.
Yeah, that's true. And I didn't go into enough detail of Paul's system, but and those who haven't seen it in a while may not remember, but he actually had two alternators that were powered by electric motors, which now Ed probably knows this better than I do, but when you're talking conversion factor of using a high powered electric motor that's powerful enough to drive an alternator that's going to, I think each one was maybe 200 amps or something. He said they were from ambulances. So they were higher than normal output, but I don't think they were what we would consider like a high output, like a 240 or 320 amp alternator. But he actually had that to keep his equipment charged. So I can imagine that's a pretty loud little setup there in that closet.
Well, I've gotten comments on my video about people saying that I should use a motor, a gasoline motor, to turn alternators to do it. Like, no, I'm doing it in my house to like not have fumes and gasoline.
Well, the funny you mentioned, Ed, because there was some consideration of when I built my lab that I was going to have a little outhouse just outside that I was going to run some zero gauge, and I was going to actually have a small V8 motor out there that I could run. Because, we're seriously trying to think of ways that we can keep our voltage up so that when we do these tests, we're making it, as close to similar as we can between all the different amps we test. Obviously, some are going to pull more current. They're going to drop the voltage a little bit more, but it's impossible using batteries and chargers to keep everything the same.
Right.
So that was just kind of a way, but obviously going the battery route and going the charger route is going to not be as expensive, but that's an extreme. I don't think a lot of people are going to want to spend the money and put the effort into it to do that. But, like we've already said, just go over it real quick so people can remember. PC power supplies will be your cheapest. They're about $20. You can get one of those. Server power supplies, not much more. But both of those are going to require some DIY action. You can get car audio specific power supplies for those are a little over 100, maybe 150 to $200 for most of those. They range anywhere from 50 amps, I guess 30 amps up to around 70 or 80 amps, kind of a standard size. The IntelliChargers that Ed was mentioning, those start at $199 and go up to $399, depending on 15 amp, 30 amp, or 60 amp. But those do add the extra features of being able to keep your batteries charged, either 12, 14, or 16 volt, which that's what makes those excess power ones. I know they're not sponsoring anything here, but that's why I bought them, because they have the flexibility of switching from 12 volt to 14 to 16 if you need to. That's just kind of an overview of that. And before we go any further, I did want to thank those who are leaving the super chats. We'll get to those here just as soon as we're done with our podcast. But those who are listening here on the podcast, make sure you check us out, youtube.com/12etalk on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, where we do this show live and you can actually interact with us and we'll hang out with you. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Rob, I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, so you were talking about the power supplies. Well, and Ed mentioned before, that's a big current draw depending on the power supply you're using on your house amperage. Now, I have 30 amp service in my garage, so it's not as big an issue, but I'm sure you've had issues with your power supply, haven't you, D?
So yeah, at one time, I did get a large 250 amp adjustable power supply that was made for, and I don't know if you guys have ever seen this. I had never seen it before, but people actually burp ham radio systems.
Oh yeah.
Did you know about that, Ed?
Yeah, and the CB crowd is big too. And I don't know if you guys know, in the SPL world, there's Terry Brock's the Trunk King.
Oh yeah.
But he's out on Facebook. He's been into that stuff, and they've always had stories. You go to a show and hear them rambling off, and they talk about that a lot. Guys can have hundreds of thousands of watts on their antennas, and if you're in a mile radius or something, you'll hear it on whatever device you have. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I had no idea. So anyway, I found this power supply locally from a guy who was into all this, and it was a huge monster that ran off a 220, and it ran off of a 30 amp 220 circuit. but it's adjustable from 9 volts up to 18 volts, and it's up to 250 amps at 18 volts. So it's a monster. But Rob, I think Rob, you've heard it before, haven't you? When you were over, did you hear it?
Yeah, I did
Yeah,
get to hear it.
it sounds like a bandsaw when you turn it on. You know how when you turn on a bandsaw, it's dun, it just makes that loud buzz. That's what it sounds like, and it has 2 1 farad caps inside of it too to kind of keep everything charged up. But anyway, again, that's an extreme example, and that one did pull a lot of juice. I could tell when I tested amps using that, my power bill was higher. So that's why I decided to get into the battery banks and try to keep everything more level, because the other thing about the battery banks is you're able to keep that more constant voltage the more batteries you add, because you're able to spread the current amongst many batteries, and you have more juice, if you want to say it that way. But with the power supply, even one like that, I was still dropping voltage pretty quickly. So the batteries kind of help out to float that.
Yeah, and a quick note on the sound of that power supply. It sounded like it was irradiating you as it was playing. That's what it sounded like if I had to describe it.
Yeah, it was kind of scary. Plus, it was hard. It was hard to make videos with it because you couldn't really use that. So let's see here. I have some examples, and people, wonder about where do you find this stuff. Well, what I would suggest is look Craigslist and OfferUp in some of your local outlets, because I found a few of the audio authorities that the car audio shops used to use. I found some of those local, and one of them, they have a hybrid model. It's called the 2/77. That one is the one a lot of the car audio shops use on their amp boards or their switching boards, because you can put a starting battery along with this, and the power supply kit keeps the battery charged, and it provides about 50 or 60 amps of continuous current. And then the starting battery gives you the extra juice. But sometimes you can find those local. I know when all of the circuit cities went out of business, they sold a lot of those. You could get them really cheap, but that's just something to look for. Audio Authority is, like I said, one of the brands, and there's some others too. But just check local. See, you might be able to find something somebody's selling and save you a few bucks that way.
Get an old Xbox power brick. That's a cheap way of doing it.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've seen that a lot too.
Yeah.
And talking about car audio power supplies, our shop used a Orion, a big, huge Orion power supply. I don't know if you guys have seen it before, but my buddy Chris ended up getting it, and I don't think it works, but those were pretty cool. I can't remember the model number either.
That was a 100 amp one. I remember seeing the pictures of that one, Rob. That was pretty cool. Can't remember who made it. I don't think it was Orion, but I know it had a big Orion logo on it.
Yeah. And there's all the pyramid ones. I think Parts Express sells all the little guys.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the pyramid ones are pretty reasonable. I'm not sure, haven't done any tests to figure out if they're overrating those like they do their other equipment.
I used to work at Circuit City, and I did the soundboards there, and our setup, I know you mentioned the other one, we were an older store, and we just had a pyramid power supply on a yellow top to run our boards, and it did okay, but we didn't have a whole lot going on. Mostly the head units and the small amps.
And I think people kind of overestimate how much amperage you're actually going to use, because if you're not dyno testing them, I mean, that is very tough on a power supply. If you're just playing music, you're not pulling that many amps typically.
That's such a good point, Rob, and it's not mentioned enough, I don't think. When you're doing tests of amplifiers using test tones, you're literally stressing that amplifier to its limit. When you're playing music, you're getting burst of current draw, but you're not getting that continuous like you are with test tones. So that's an excellent point. You still want to make sure, and I'll give an example, the Orion 225 HCCA, that little red amp that everybody used to use back in the 90s. So it had a 50 amp fuse, I think they suggested with it. Well, I tried that with a 50 amp power supply playing music, and I shut the power supply down because it drew a lot more than that. But in a lot of cases, like you said, you don't need all that much I've set up small amplifiers using a 10 amp power supply, 12 volt, and it gets pretty dang loud. And you're like, wow, that's all that I need. So you may not need as big as you think, I guess is one way to put it.
I think that's true. Very true.
Yeah, and as far as the equipment you're going to use on these, we've talked about the power supply. What concessions will we have to make or consider, if any at all, in your guys' opinions?
Ed, I'll let you go first.
Well, I think we talked a little bit about sometimes there's noise. But also, I think when I'm mentioning my favorite type of setup with adding a battery and like the Intella supply, it is a do-it-yourself project. Maybe the lab power supply, if you're going that route, everything's there. I have the banana jack terminals if you just want to use those, and you're good to go. But usually, it's like doing an install in a car. You need your fuse blocks and your distribution blocks, and cut your wire and set it up. And if you don't want it in the way, maybe build a cabinet or have a shelf with everything so it's nice and neat, or on your bench or whatever. So it takes work no matter what setup you're doing. It's not going to buy a home stereo, plug it in, you're good to go. There's a lot more involved. So I think that's the major concession. But I think most of the people that are tuning into this type of thing are already in the hobby of doing that. So that's not that big of a deal for them, I guess. So it wasn't for me. And, I've been doing this since I was 13 years old. That's what I did, car audio in my house. And it's fun. To me, that's fun. I like the project. I like the hobby part of it like that.
Well, it's a great way to learn. Like you said, some of these kids may not be 16 yet or may not have a car. Or maybe they live in a place where they can't have a car, like New York City or somewhere where it's really expensive to own a car. And, you can have the fun of the wiring. I know to some people it's not fun, but for me it is, hooking everything up and making everything look neat and, doing your fuse blocks, like you said, and using your Sparked Innovation devices there to hook multiple amps up, your little relay boxes and your little voltmeters. Make sure you check out sparkedinnovations.com and pick some of that up so you can help Mr. Ed out. Definitely. And hey, before we go too far, Ed, make sure you grab one of those and we'll show it to everybody before we get off here, because that's something I think they may want to see. If you have one that do you have one you can show us?
Yeah.
Okay. So while Ed's going away or coming back, one thing I would say too is another concession would be, what kind of amp do you want to use? Because if you're looking to use a really big bass amplifier, an example that we brought up was the 12K tar amps, then you're going to have a huge amount of power on tap to be able to run something like that. But what Ed has here is one of the devices that Sparked Innovation makes, which is their relay box. And something like this is neat because you can hook up multiple amplifiers using this box, and he's got all the outputs fused and just a really nice little setup here. And I'm sorry to make him open this up. I'm sure he's going through a lot of work of putting it all in there.
I can get a new bag. All right, so yeah. But actually, this brings me, if we want to talk a little bit, I've been trying to think of product lines, product ideas to build for test benches. This can be used for that. And all it is, you feed your 8-gauge power. You hook it up like an amplifier, 8-gauge power and ground in, and then you have all your remote triggers. You can. We have those cables, all the ports. It's a 4-pin port, so you don't have to wire a switch. We have the LED illuminated switches that will plug directly in, so you can have each channel turn on different amplifier, your head unit, whatever you want it to do. And obviously pre-fused and distribution where there's 2 outputs for ground, 2 for constant output, things like that. And onboard switches if you don't want a remote one. So that's useful for a lot of things. And I use it on my test bench. So I'm thinking about making other accessories for test benches as well.
Yeah, so those of you who want to, set up, it's always been kind of my dream to set up like a car audio display board. The old ones where you'd have the head unit and maybe an equalizer, maybe a crossover, and then your components and your subwoofers and then all your different amps. It'd be really neat to have, do this 12-volt at home thing that we're talking about, have something like Ed's relay box there to have everything really nicely wired and everything. That sounds like a cool little future video that we need to work on, Rob. I think we need to work on something like that. That would be neat.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Do it.
I
I
have
had a
go
prototype.
ahead.
Well, I won't show it fully, but it had buttons in there so to use as like a test bench and a volume knob and all that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Sweet. I know somebody, Ed. We need to talk, man.
We'll get it.
We've talked about all the power supply and the amps and all that. Let's talk about car speakers. Now, what should we do with car speakers? Should we build a special enclosure? Should we repurpose old enclosures, home audio enclosures? How do you go about it personally? Or do you build a speaker yourself from what was it you used, Ed?
Which one?
You built the one, what is it, didn't you just buy a transducer?
Yeah. That was the Dayton audio transducer, and I made that panel. I cut it out on my CNC and the acrylic on the laser and everything. That's downstairs in the shop. That's a shop speaker right now. Those things are cool. I never messed with transducers until that, so that's a good idea. If you're talking about car speakers in the house, I've done that before too. Component sets and whatnot. I like the idea of building my own towers and using car speakers, but a lot of, at least coax, they're almost built in a way to be infinite baffle. Even though there's not a whole lot of time and consideration taken into enclosure volume in mids, they still act in a way where they need an enclosure, or they might be better a little bit for one side to the other. And I think home speakers are done a little different, where a lot of them prefer smaller enclosures, sealed or even ported, but a lot smaller. And when I was a kid, I used to mess with this stuff before I had a car. I did this stuff for years, just trying different things. Radio Shack was a great place back then. The realistic tweeters and all that stuff. In later years, they didn't have any of that. But I remember messing around with different drivers and just seeing how they react. And I had a desk, just a regular wooden, like it would be an IKEA desk. And I took the drawers out and I put panels and I screwed them to the front of the desk, and I would cut. So the lower drawers, the bigger drawers, I put subwoofers in there. And then I put my head unit in like the middle drawer. And then I had speakers in the tops, mids and tweeters and everything. And just kind of using that to play around with, seal up the back of it, open it up. How did it sound? Put in a different speaker. And when I was using coax, sorry, I got a car driving by out there. When I was using coax, like, or 6x9s and stuff, they always did better in like an infinite baffle. So I took a board and closed off half of my closet door area and put speakers in there, and that sounded phenomenal. So I haven't messed around in years with that kind of stuff, but again, it's like a hobby thing. You just play around and see what works best. I think if you're looking for a challenge, buying a component set, a car component set, and designing your own tower, maybe kind of an infinite baffle, just a board with holes in it. I don't know. Could be fun.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's one of those things that you just play around with. And if you're trying to do this on a budget anyway, then repurposing some home speakers that are blown, like some bookshelf speakers, there's never a problem with that. Obviously, some of them may have ports and may be tuned for the specific driver, so you may have issues there, but just try it. That's the big thing about car audio and audio in general, is that you hear a lot of things, you read a lot of things, but if you test and try things yourself, you can learn a lot, that way, without being scared. Oh, I'm afraid it's not going to sound good because XYZ said it wouldn't. We'll try it. If it doesn't sound good, then do something different. And I think that's one of the great learning things about using car audio in your home. Not only that you don't have to have a car, you can play around with fun things and learn how to do wiring and use relay boxes and stuff like that. But it's just a neat little hobby for people to do, and I think that's what's real neat about it. And Rob, we've talked here a little bit about home theaters and stuff like that. Now, I haven't seen anything set up that way, and I didn't want to tease, but I'm working on something for the future with a home theater with all car audio equipment, and I'm pretty excited to show that when I get some more time to finish it. But I think it'd be fun because show off the amplifiers, maybe mount them backwards so you can see the guts. Have all the wiring real neat in the room and things like that. Just to me, it's exciting. To everybody, it may not be, but I think it's fun, and that's what this is all about.
Yeah, and that leads me to another question. 5.1. What processing can you use for something like that? Now, this also may go into the other question we had: is do you use a car audio head unit? Do you use a home audio head unit? What's your source unit? What's your processing? What's your thought for all that? If you're going to do a 5.1, and is it even possible using all car audio equipment?
So it's possible for sure. The way I'm going to do it is the last home audio receiver I purchased has preamp outputs for all the channels, and I'm going to use the home audio receiver and just not use the built-in amp. I'm going to use that to power all the or to provide signal for all the amplifiers. But using something like, well, the Dayton one doesn't have enough channels, I don't guess, to do a true home theater because you only need 6 channels, but they have to be configurable so that you could have the center and the sub, and then the processing would be an issue because Ed, I don't know if you know, but back in the day they had some Dolby processors for the car, but I haven't seen anything aftermarket like that recently that'll do like DTS or Dolby Digital or what is the new one, Atmos or any of that. I'm not aware of any car equipment that'll do that. Do you know?
I'm not sure if the Audison does. But I know, I'm not sure if you guys knew this, there used to be a surround sound car stereo format. And they would judge you based off of your theater experience in your vehicle. And I think Audio Control jumped on board with that and had a unit. I think Audison, I'm not sure if it's the Bit One or one of their other units that did that. The US might not be big for that. But if you look at German and European and even South American car audio processors, a lot of them have stuff like that. So I haven't done my research in a while, and I can't tell you exact brands or models, but I've seen it here and there. So it should be out there.
So is the JBL MS8, is that 5.1? I think I remember something like that, but I can't remember their processor that they come out with.
Yeah, well, you have to remember, it could be 5.1, but the problem is going to be, is it decoding DTS or Dolby Digital or things like that? Like you could have the 5.1 channels, but then you're going to have the source that's able to provide the 5.1 signal. So example would be a DVD, a Blu-ray, things like that. Most of the audio that we listen to these days is 2-channel. And then it's the full range of 2 channels, obviously, so you can have your subs and all your mids and high frequencies. But in that case, you would really you'd have to have an external processor that would actually be able to handle those. And then you have to have the signal. So if you wanted to do a home theater with all car equipment, that would be really difficult because of the limited options you'd have for getting the source and everything else in my opinion.
And what is out there is probably expensive.
Yeah.
Right. So get you a $550 Onkyo receiver like I did. It's got all the preamp outs, and then you can use car amps and figure out how to give them power and use all your car speakers, and then you're done.
Those Onkyos, man, if you're talking about big power in the house, I had one of those Onkyos from like the 80s. The thing weighed like 100 pounds, and I got it at a flea market for like $7 or a yard sale or something like that. And they're no joke. So if you want to run big amps in your house, but you come across an Onkyo receiver, grab one of those real quick.
Yeah, he's right. I like the Onkyo stuff. Even though they have HDMI issues with their boards they have over the years, I still keep buying them because I really like them. Yeah. But and for the money, you can't beat them either for all the features they have. But that would be my recommendation, Rob. If somebody wants to do home theater using car equipment, just get you a receiver that's got preamp outs for all the channels, and then have fun figuring out how you're going to do all your wiring and provide all these amplifiers the power they need. And send us some pictures if you do it. Somebody out there has done it. I know they have. Just like Paul made this 11,000 watt car stereo home setup that, like, what is going on here? But there's always somebody out there who's got too much time, too much money, and just wants to go crazy. And that's the kind of stuff I love to see. So send us a picture, send us a video, 12etalk@gmail.com. We'll talk about you.
Yeah, for sure.
In the military, guys, they were doing car audio stuff in their chests, in the what do they call them? The foot locker, is it a foot locker or a chest or whatever?
Foot locker.
Yeah. So I've had a lot of those guys contact me on how to hook up their stereos in one of those. So if there's anyone watching that has those, send in pictures too, because they're fun.
Yeah, we'd love to. And the Blaupunk $10 head unit that I did a while back, that's now only $12, still ultra cheap. That is an excellent source for doing something like we're talking about here, because it's a lightweight unit, it has Bluetooth, it has USB, it has micro SD, it has a tuner built in, it has a built-in amplifier too for powering some smaller speakers, and it has preamp outputs. So something like that could be the source unit for your car stereo at home. So make sure you check out that video and pick one of those up if you have any interest in doing this at all. That for years I've been looking for something as simple as this source unit that can do as much as it can do, and for the price, it's a serious no-brainer. I just can't believe they're still the price. Sorry for the side jag there, Rob.
Oh no, and it's a lot better than those Kenter, them old Chinese amps that they would sell on there. That they were just terrible. So I might pick one of those up myself. So we kind of talked about everything. Now, at the end of the day, is it even worth it? And what are the pros and cons? Maybe some that we haven't mentioned. I think we all kind of land in the same space here, but I'd like to hear from you anyways.
So I'll start real quick. Obviously, a pro would be the availability of options that you have. We've already talked about PC power supplies, server power supplies, car audio specific power supplies, charger/power supplies, battery banks. We didn't really talk about super caps, but super caps is an option as well. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. It just depends on A, how much money you have, B, what are you trying to do, and in a lot of cases, how much money you have depends on what you can do. So you need to set your goals in a range where it's actually feasible to do this. But starting off small, getting you a head unit, getting you a smaller power supply that can run it, and maybe a small amp or something like that, I think is a great way to start. And then, learning more about how electronics work, how much current that you have available, how interested you are in the DIY scene will depend on how far you can go or how deep your wallet is, because you have a lot of options. If you have a deep wallet, you can have somebody else do this for you. But so that's kind of what I think. It's really cool to do, but like Ed said before, you got to be prepared to do some wiring and figure out some stuff, and maybe jump some jumpers if you're using a server or PC power supply to make it start up.
So I guess, should I talk about a pro to it that I haven't mentioned before?
Yeah.
The way I think about it is almost like it's just being different and like a conversation piece. I have in my other room here an original hardware NES, SNES, Sega Genesis, and Nintendo 64. All the games I have for them, I could play on new hardware on my LED screens. Or a lot of those games you can now emulate and play from your PC. Why do I play them on original hardware? Because it's more fun. It's the nostalgia of it. So part of having car audio in your house, if you want to build a whole setup using car amps and woofers and speakers, and even running it off a head unit, you got people come over and you can put it in a nice display setup with LEDs on it and this and that, and it can be a conversation piece. It could be just a cool, funky feature of your house, or your man cave or your garage or whatever you want to do. If you have a home stereo with a couple bookshelf speakers, it's not going to get much of a conversation started unless you go really crazy with your home stereo, which some people do. But I think it costs more money to do that. And to me, it's just part of being in that hobby of car audio. If I go into someone's house and they have a bunch of old Rockford or Orion amps lined up and that's where the music's coming from, I'm going to want to go to that house more. I'm going to want to hang out there.
That's a great point, Ed. I should have thought of mentioning that too, because I kind of feel the same way. Anytime you're an enthusiast, you do the things that the normal people, quote unquote, don't do. And yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think it would be super awesome to do it just to kind of show off, if for nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a couple pros and cons myself, and I would say one of the biggest pros, Ed's already touched on it, and that's the fact that I think you can get better sound for cheaper. You get louder, better, cheaper than you can with home audio. And it's just simple as if you buy in-car audio, if you buy a box built by JL with their 13W7 in it, it's going to cost you a lot of money. Versus if you just buy the 13W7 and you build the box yourself. That's kind of what you're doing here when you're doing the home audio. So that's one big pro for me. I think it's cheaper. Sometimes people already have this equipment. And another pro, like Ed said, it's just cooler. It's cooler to have this type of stuff. I think you have more flexibility. You can build your cabinets the way you want them. You can, you can switch equipment out. Equipment that you're collecting can be used. All that type of stuff. Now, one of the biggest cons I would say is it's basically like the babysitter test. So if you have someone babysitting and you're trying to show them how to work the TV and the Roku and the PlayStation, that's the problem. If you're not the one running it, then everybody else is going to have a problem figuring out how this works.
Rob, we lost your video. But we can still hear you talking, no problem. But your video dropped there. I'm not sure if the camera got. There you go. I see you again. Yeah, I agree with both of you 100%. And I just think hey, it's something fun to do. We're all kind of hobbyists here, and some more serious than others. But that's kind of Ed and Rob and I, all three of us, when we're making videos for people to watch, we like to think sometimes outside the box. Of course, we also like to think about the simple things because we get so many of those questions. But things like this, using car audio in the home, Ed's got a really good explanatory video. Rob is working on one, but had some issues with some power supplies that he got in. But just checking out and seeing what you can do. I think it's fun. Just play around with it. Get one. Have your own little test bench at home. It doesn't have to be a huge place. It can just be like a table, and have it so you can set this little power supply or whatever you make up on the table, and you can test head units and check out amps, make sure they work. There's a lot of reasons why you'd want to use car audio at home for more than just running a whole system, right? If you just need to test things, it's great to have. And like for my example with the battery banks, when we had a huge storm last year, we had a hurricane come through North Carolina. I actually bought a lot of adapters so that I could use my 12-volt power or my 14-volt power, my 14-volt battery bank as a way to charge all my phones, charge all my flashlights, charge my batteries, things like that. So there's another kind of off the wall way to use this equipment that we're talking about. You can use it for charging up things you can use on an everyday basis if there's something that happens. But anyway, that's kind of where I come from with this. I think it's fun. I think everybody should try it. And if you don't have something at home capable of running 12-volt equipment, go get you something and go buy you that $10, $12 head unit because you'll have fun with it.
That's
Yeah, for sure. So I think we kind of covered what we could on that topic. Maybe we should jump into what's going on in car audio YouTube. You see anything good, Ed? What you been watching?
been watching your videos there. But yeah, I mean, there's always stuff going on. I've been so busy this week, I haven't kept up my normal watching routine. But I guess whatchamacallit, I forget his name. Oh crap! Now I forget. So
That one guy with the videos and stuff.
yeah. There's one guy. Actually, there's a video I've seen. That's I'm trying to remember someone new that I found out, and I should have brought the tab up or something like that. I'd have to go through my search history now, my watch history, to see. But I discovered someone new, so I haven't um, seen a lot of new people recently, and this guy had some cool videos that I like to watch. And I'm sorry I forget what it is, and I don't
Yeah.
have it. There is something cool out there, trust me.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know if you could see my shirt here or not, but our buddy Kyle Rutherford does a cool channel. He hadn't had a content in a while, but hopefully it's getting soon. He just released a video mailing stuff out, so we could see Clippo soon, maybe.
Clippo will be at the TDA show. I'll be there also with Sparked Innovations. Another video, really quick. A series is Derek. Is his name Derek? Also from Sundown Unofficial. He's
I
been
think so.
SPL truck, and he has problems with his windshield. So seeing the whole kind of process of what he's doing has been interesting too. And I think he's going to plexiglass windshield, and that might have been his latest video. So that's a cool one to check out.
And I know Everyday Audios, I don't know if you got to catch it yesterday, but they had a guest on that was kind of a sound deadening expert somewhat. He's got a YouTube channel. I forget the name. It's Patrick something. I don't know if you've seen it before, but I started watching a couple of his videos last night after the show, and yeah, they're pretty good.
It's a new one. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been some interesting ones that I've seen the past few weeks. Been like Ed, I've been busy doing other things, but that's kind of my chill time to watch videos. Rob had the one about wiring the woofers. That's always cool because we get that question all the time. You know, it's funny. I did the video on the four ohm Blaupunk subs, and people were telling me that I can wire them at 2 ohms. And math, you can do it however you want. You can't wire four ohm woofers to 2 ohms. You can do it 2 ohms times two for 2 channels, but you can't wire it to 2 ohms. But anyway, so Rob's explanation, there's a lot of other people that have done videos like that. I think videos where you're helping people understand things is always good. And Ed does great videos like that as well. And Ed, I noticed you've been putting out a lot more content lately. And I see your subscribers, you know, you hit 30K a while back, you're growing a lot quicker. I think what you'll start to see is if you're able to keep the regular stuff going. I know it's hard to do it once a week or, you know, once every 10 days, something like that. But I think what I've found is the consistency obviously helps tremendously with the growth. And it's hard to do, but you know, if you want to grow, it's one thing that definitely helps.
Definitely. I took that lesson from you, and I already always kind of knew it. I just couldn't follow through. This week's been so busy because I'm trying to get products launched and get ready for the Team Deadly Hertz show next weekend. So the video, I wanted to finish my port on the enclosure that I was doing for the $150 SPL challenge, and I hadn't got to it yet. Today's been stressful and busy. So after I sign off here, I got to go meet someone and take care of something, but then I'm going to probably get to the finishing the design and CNCing pieces for that port and maybe film it tomorrow and get it up by Friday. I've been trying to do every Thursday, but that might be Friday. Last month I was trying to do 2 videos a week, and it's just too much.
That is way too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, we didn't really talk about that much because it's not really a topic here, but I would urge everybody to check out the $150 SPL challenge. Ed, Rob, and I are all three kind of throwing our hat in the ring. Obviously, Ed and Rob much more pros at this than me. I'm a complete noob at it, but who cares? I'm having fun.
Ed's a pro. I'm not. I'm a rookie.
Yeah, but you have done SPL comps before, so that says much more than me. But anyway, it's a lot of fun. You know, for $150, what kind of equipment can you get? Just speakers and amps, or speakers alone. Ed's going with 218s. Rob had 118, but he's kind of switching it up and going with something different. I'm not going to say what it is, but that's going to be fun. I've got 412s and a small amp. But yeah, stuff like that. Again, we're hobbyists. We're having a good time. That's what it's all about. But yeah, so use car audio in your home. Have fun with it. I think that's really about all we have to talk about during the episode here. I know Ed's gonna do a giveaway of a woofer, but we'll do that in the after show, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that then. So thanks everybody for watching. YouTube.com/12eTalk. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Play Music. Check us out there. Also check out HiFiVega on YouTube and Facebook and all that good stuff, and ShowtimeSPL on YouTube and Facebook, and also SparkedInnovations.com. You can see Ed's equipment that he makes and help support him. We appreciate him taking the time. Thank you, Ed, for taking the time to join us here tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. We appreciate you fitting us into your busy schedule. Rob, as always, it's been a pleasure. Everybody who's in the chat room, hang on. We're going to get to you here in just a minute. Thanks, everybody. Have a good week. We'll see you next week.
One more thing before we sign out. Everybody, I'm Robert HiFiVega on Facebook now. You can add me on there. I'll accept as many requests as I can. Also, I'm using Instagram more at HiFiVega. Yeah, trying to make some social media stuff happen. So, till next time, we out of here.
All right, cool. Thanks, guys. So I'm going to go through real quick. Before we go too far, extra super duper shout out. We got some super chats. Ron J.L. White, thank you so much for the super chat. Let's see, Ron, $20, man. That's way too much. And Ron, thank you too. And I was hoping that I was going to be able to run this tonight so I could share the pictures of the things you sent me. Ron sent me a JL Audio, the banner that has the little JL logos. It's not really a banner. What's the thing with little triangles on it? I guess they still call it a banner. Anyway, he sent me one of the what?
A pennant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. He sent one of those, and he also sent me some custom-made little key rings that have JL Audio logo on them. So thank you, Ron. I appreciate that. Jesse Gill, thank you for the super chat. We greatly appreciate it. Again, guys, we don't ask for you to help us out that way, but appreciate it because we do pay for there's things that we pay for doing this show, obviously, for the microphones, for the hardware equipment we use. We just got Rob a different computer. We need other things, and we also pay for the hosting on SoundCloud so that we can host all these podcasts. So it's very helpful. Mark Crawley, $24.99. Thank you, Mark. Mark, you're the man. Michael Hemrick, $10. How much more you guys need to cover the year? We'll have to add it up, Michael, because it's last year it was $140 for the hosting, and this year it's coming up again for another $140. So we're getting pretty close, I think, for both years. Rob, what do you think? We're getting probably close to a couple hundred now.
Yeah, I think so.
So anyway, close. Yeah, we greatly appreciate you guys helping us out. We really do. And I'm gonna scroll through and look, and I'll put myself on mute. If you guys find any questions before I do, go ahead and shoot them.
All right, fellas, pop them questions back up. Obviously, my video has been out this whole time. I guess with the snafu where I had to rejoin, kind of messed the whole plan up.
Yeah, I was going to tell you when you started having the issue, it wouldn't switch, and it's just staying on me. And those who are wondering why I'm not showing my video, it's because I'm in a place where I don't have very good lighting, and I figure it would be better than to show nothing than to show something. And Ed's looking at the questions here too. Yeah. So if you guys if you can ask us.
I see one.
Okay, go ahead.
Nathan Potter asked if it would be better to use batteries and caps, ultra caps together. My answer is yes, actually always in every setup. All of my testing I've ever done, a hybrid between batteries, whether lithium or AGM, and ultra caps gives you the best performance. And believe it or not, the caps actually help increase the efficiency of charging the batteries back up. So it just runs smoother. It's not less power consumption overall. It's just the way that caps are filters also. but it just helps run everything more efficiently, and power is much more consistent. If I can look for more, I don't see any more.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for myself here.
Joaquin said he just bought the RD power supply. Joaquin, did you buy that from Rusty Radio, or did you get it from somebody else? Because when I checked and I emailed him, he did not have. He never replied back, for one, and the other thing is I didn't see it on eBay. So let me know if I missed something there.
Someone asked about RV power converters for battery setups. I'm not sure what an RV battery power converter is.
So I think what those are, Ed, they're very similar to just a switching power supply. Because if you look on eBay, they have 100 amp models, and they basically take the 120 amp outlet and they convert it to 12 volts. But I'm not sure how, because they have batteries that they have in RVs that they need to charge up and stuff. So they work kind of like your IntelliCharger. Obviously not as efficiently because they're a lot cheaper and probably a lot more cheaply made. But they would work, but I have not run one myself either to know if they would work well. Like if you had a bank of batteries, they would probably help charge. But we didn't really get into how to use batteries inside and how you have to be careful with the fumes and all that. I know we didn't really get into that, but that's probably something we should have mentioned, because there are some concerns, obviously, with using regular batteries that are not sealed, right?
You probably had a disclaimer: use AGM or lithium only.
Exactly. We don't want anybody to die breathing harmful fumes. Those 12-volt guys, those 12-volt talk guys said I could use them in my house.
There you go. That was Robert Vega. Talk to him.
That's right. Now I can only see out of one eye and hear out of one ear.
I will say something to that, because I saw a post on Facebook yesterday about someone asking if they could put a wet cell battery in the back, and you can. I mean, there's race cars that do it. They have those battery boxes and vent tubes. When I was 16 with my first car, I did not do that, and I had big deep cycle marine batteries in the back, and I had one of my favorite woofers of all time that I wish I could get again is the Pioneer IMPPs from the 90s. And over a few months, the surrounds started getting holes in them, and I didn't know why. It was the fumes from the battery. Just ate it away. So that's something to watch out for. Not necessarily that it'll kill you, but it'll kill your woofers.
Yeah.
Well, if it does that to your woofers, Ed, I'm kind of scared of what it's going to do to your body if you're inhaling those.
Exactly.
But if you're going to run regular batteries, not AGMs, and you're going to try to keep them under the hood if you can, extra.
Definitely.
Like my Suburban's got spot for 2. I mean, most bigger vehicles, you can fit a second battery.
Yeah. Should I, while we have time, ask my trivia question for the giveaway?
Yes, please.
All right,
Please do.
We'll see if they have time. If people have hung in there, I appreciate you guys for hanging around this much. But this is for Rob. Rob is basically sponsoring this woofer from 12V Talk, which is the Elemental Designs home audio woofer. The question for the first person that can answer, what was my first real car amp? So the answer to this ties in something I said when I was on 12V Talk back in November, something I've said in my videos, and it's one that I used in my house when I was 13 years old. So it ties in with this perfectly. We'll see who can answer that.
And those who are wondering, it's not a Kenter. I'll go ahead and give you a tip. It's not a Kenter.
Could be.
Or a pie.
In Rockwoods, though.
I've got a Kenter boombox at work, and it actually sounds pretty good. I mean, I put it in a toolbox, and at work it's so loud it's hard to hear anything. But
the Kenter,
yeah, but it works pretty good. The FM tuner is absolute garbage, but
you might have a win. I have to see if I'll accept that answer. Joaquin Juarez.
Yeah, I knew he knew, because I knew what it was too.
You guys can see this on.
Yeah, we can see it, Ed. We see it loud and clear.
All right. So that's this. This isn't one I bought. This is the actual original amp that I bought in 1993. So
Very cool.
that's right. The 60 DSM. I call it the Punch 60 IX, but I'll accept that answer. So he gets it. He wins. Congratulations, man! And thanks for remembering that.
And
Winner.
thank you, Ed, for holding on to those end caps.
Oh yeah.
Jeez.
I have the gold end caps from the 200.2s. I have like 7. I don't know why I have 7, but I have 7 of them around in a box somewhere. So I don't have the amps. I have the end caps.
Well, yeah, they're missing from a lot of amps. And I know even when I didn't use, like if I put it in my spare tire well or something to hide the amp and I took the caps off, I still kept the caps, people. Don't throw them away.
I know.
Yeah,
I keep the screws in
happens.
this. You know what I would love? To mount these on my wall and use a bunch of these for a home audio setup. So that would be cool.
That would be super sweet.
Our buddy Sean had a sweet system with, what did he use, 40s or 60s, Derek?
40s, Punch 40s.
Yeah, it was awesome. Like, what do you have, 4, 6 of them, something like that?
I think it was 6. He's actually in the chat, or he was in the chat. Sean, remind us how many Punch 40s you had in your Acura TL.
Yeah, it was
I think it was. I think it might have been 5 because it was 200 watts total. And if my math is correct, 5 times 40 is 200.
5. It's at 5.
5 of them.
Oh, 5. Okay, so my math is not right because he had 5 instead of 4. No,
Very
5 is
cool.
right. 5 times 40 is, yeah, that's what I said, 5 of them.
You got it.
I'm sorry. I'm not on like regular time here. Sorry.
They serving margaritas over there?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I have to go upstairs and check.
Oh, man.
Still getting answers. Wasn't your first amp Punch 6? Yes, Joaquin got it. He won. So I guess we'll arrange either me or so Robert, I think, still has the prize to send out.
Already boxed up. Joaquin, he knows my number. He can hit me up.
All right.
So I do got a question for you guys. Have you ever heard about seriesing subwoofers being bad for amps? I got that a few times on my video.
Yeah. I got it the same thing, that I'm losing power by running them in series instead of going parallel to 2 channels on the 2 channel amp. So it's similar. The question I got, or the comments I got, was similar. I think a lot of people nowadays don't understand 2 channel amps versus mono blocks.
Yeah.
But what you're saying, Rob, is utter gibberish.
Well, no, this comes from JL Audio. I was sent a link.
This is the default. That's what TS parameters are run off of. And in the day, dual voice coil woofers, if a model came out with a single coil and a dual voice coil, the single would be the dual coil wired in series internally under the dust cap.
Yeah. So I think what they were saying is if it's a 2 single voice coil subwoofers. Now I didn't read it all the way through, so that's why I left it to after chat. But Paul Smith's the one that hit me up with it and asked me what I thought about it, and I told him I'd never heard of it. Yeah. But their test was that they were seriesing single subwoofers, 4 of them up, and they were not electrically connected or in a box. They were just connected series, and they would push one dust cap down and the other 3 would go up, or one cone down, the other 3 would go up.
Yeah.
And they were saying it was something with sound quality, and this is the first I'd ever heard of it.
Well, it does that in parallel too, though, so I don't understand. But
yeah,
with longer runs, it changes the BL and the actual magnetic field of the coil in series versus parallel, and you get something called joule heating. I covered that in a video like a long time ago. So if you have the same ohm load, a 2 ohm final load, but the woofers or coils were wired in series, and the same 2 ohm final load, but the woofers or coils were wired in parallel, it would be louder when it's in parallel because of joule heating and inefficiencies in series.
That might be what they were saying then.
Yeah, it's a very, very, very small amount. Yeah.
I'm very intrigued now to try my 2 channel amp at 2 ohm stereo versus 4 ohms mono.
Oh, so I've gotten that too as well, where they said that they've seen some amps do that, and I was like, "Yeah, you know what? I'll test it like that because I don't know if it's true, but I've got the means to test it when I'm testing an amp anyway. So why not try it and see what it does?"
That's what it comes down to nowadays. Just try it.
Yeah,
Yeah, the main reason I didn't try it because it required 2 more wires to be run to my box, and I use
Yeah.
I use 8 gauge anywhere. I'm like, why would you need more than 8 gauge for 600 watts? But
yeah. Well, you know, they were saying it was because in one of my videos, I think I put 4 ohms mono simulates 2 ohms stereo, and then that's where he's telling me, he's like, I've had instances where 2 ohms stereo was actually more powerful than 4 ohms mono, and I was like, you know what? Next time I do it, I'm gonna try it, and then we'll see.
I have seen that, but the difference when I tested it both ways, like on the dyno with an amp, was literally 1% or less. It was like a couple watts here versus that. It was not a discernible difference at all. Like I wouldn't even consider it enough difference to even know that if I ran it the other way multiple times, one of those
Yeah.
the results wouldn't be the same.
Anything under 10% in my mind wouldn't have been a discernible difference anyways.
It might be different depending on the topology of the amp. If it's a class AB high current type amp versus a class D, there might be differences with that.
Something to test for sure.
Yeah, it is. Ed, I know it's getting close to your out time, so we don't obviously don't want to keep you on if you need to drop, but we're just going to keep scrolling through here to see if there's any more. If anybody has any more questions, hit us up. If we missed your question, shoot it to us again.
These guys love chatting. It's always good to see that.
Yeah. Yeah, they've usually got very in-depth conversations that I don't know nothing about, and I'm trying to scroll through and catch up on the fly.
Yeah.
So real quick, Ed, so I've talked to Rob about this just to kind of throw it to you because I know you've got plenty of time to do things like this. But future idea for videos. So we're this whole $150 SPL challenge has got me thinking about ways that we can engage the community moving forward doing other challenges. So I'll run them by you and I'll run them by Rob too. But moving forward, I just thought, it would be cool to not just wait every year for the $150 SPL challenge. Just figure out some other ways to do little fun challenges that are not very expensive and, just involve the community. I think it would be neat and it would, maybe bring more people interest and stuff like that. So I'll hit you up when I have some ideas, but I've already got some ideas of what we could do.
Yeah. Can come up with a few. Plenty of fun things out there to do.
Yeah, for sure. I'm always game, and I should already had my 150 challenge video out, but the 18
Rob,
didn't do what I
you've
expected.
been but you've been real busy on the weekends too, and
Yeah.
we all have to work. The $250 SQ challenge. There you go, Robert Van Hoy. I mean, there's
Who's gonna judge it?
Yeah, the thing about SQ is just, oh my gosh, I love sound quality systems, but I hate thinking about somebody being able to choose one over another and be consistent. I have a problem with not being able to measure things to get that answer, and I don't think I'm the only one that has that problem.
How do you judge it through videos? You could do an aesthetic type of judging. Elect someone as a judge, as a guest judge, and people send in pictures or video of maybe it's an enclosure contest. The best looking enclosure wins the prize. Maybe something like that.
Hey, I got
That's
one.
good.
I got one for everybody watching this one. The best at-home system using 12-volt electronics.
Best
Do it.
for an SPL challenge in your house.
Yeah.
So where is the safe place to mount the meter if you're going to test it in your house? In the corner.
I mean, we could say, you can mount it anywhere except in the port.
In the port, yeah. That's how I got my 150 with my Blaupunks, by the way. I threw the meter into the port. No, that wasn't Blaupunks. That was a different sub. Sorry, I just gave it away for somebody who hasn't seen the video. It hasn't come out yet.
Wait, that video isn't coming out? I thought I seen that video.
The Blaupunk one has, but the other one, the Rockville one, is still kind of in the works.
Oh, okay.
The K9.
I'm going to address, I've seen like at least 2 questions people asking about my relay box. They're available now. They're just not in the packaging. I have to laser cut the foam. So if you order now, I can do that tomorrow and ship them out.
Nice.
Someone did ask, Joaquin asked, if I were to use batteries, supercaps along with LED power supplies as a power source for a garage radio, what I would say, if he's talking about LED power supplies like the wall warts, that's a switch mode power supply, and I do not like them. They have a lot of noise. There's a high pitched noise with those a lot for powering his garage radio. So usually when they're used to power up like a home stereo or a boombox, there's extra filtration in that unit. So if you're using it as its own power supply, I don't know. I wouldn't do it.
I wouldn't either, Ed, and I'd be careful with those because I bought one that said it was a 20 amp, 12 volt power supply from one of those Chinese companies, and it looks like a small version of a PC power supply, but when I put it on the bench and actually got up to about 10 amps, it shut off. So those are overrated, like a lot of the Chinese electronics. So just be careful if you go that route, Joaquin. Just realize that if it says 20 amps, it's not going to do 20 amps.
And they can melt the plastic housing if they get too hot.
Yeah.
Power Wheels Challenge.
Yeah.
There is that shows. I've never been too into that. I don't have a kid, so maybe that's why.
Yeah, I kept one around for a while just because I thought about doing something fun with it, but I gave it away last year to the Goodwill, so I don't have a Power Wheels anymore.
I have a hoverboard. Do the hoverboard challenge.
Sweet. Well, Rob, you can't see the picture behind him, and Ed, I don't remember if you were on. We talked about this, but Rob actually did a Crutchfield challenge back. What year was that, Rob? 2000?
2008.
2008, and he built a sound system for his brother-in-law's wheelchair. Yep. Is that right?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the same scenario as this, but I guess you used a battery for that, right, Rob?
Well, the wheelchair has batteries on it, so I just wired in with those. The whole video is up on Crutchfield's website. I think I got it saved on one of my playlists as well on my channel.
Nice. So you drained the length of him being able to get somewhere based on how loud he's got his music cranked.
You know what? It didn't affect it hardly at all. Hardly at all. It was surprising. I mean, he didn't lose any distance.
That's super cool though that you did that for him.
Yeah, and it actually sounded, it sounded pretty good. Sadly he's passed away several years ago, but he was a heck of a dude.
Yeah, that was cool of you to do that though. I'm sure he appreciated it too.
Yeah. It was actually the very first Crutchfield You Dream It, We Help You Build It challenge.
Yeah. We got to do stuff sponsored by Old School Stereo.
Yeah, for sure.
There you go.
Challenge, best wife system.
Well, guys, sorry we had an issue with the video switching here. I think Rob had some issues, but let's see. Big D, how did you load up your power supply again? How'd you load test? Oh, so Joaquin, I had a clamp. So I put my flute clamp on the positive of the power lead, and I just ran a test tone with an amplifier. And like I said, it was supposed to be a 20 amp power supply, but it only got to less than 10, and the power supply just shut off.
Wow.
There's probably a lot more. There's a better way to do it without using a clamp. I'm sure. I don't have the equipment to do it the other way, where you could run a shunt or something in series and then test it that way.
Well, you get a consumption meter on the AC side.
A
Or an
kilowatt.
Can what?
A kilowatt. Is that what they were called? The things you plug into the wall and it tells you how much juice you were pulling?
Oh, there's those things to check. Yeah, make sure, see if you have a drain to get your electric bill better or something. But there's industrial units that will tell you power consumption, but as well as current draw and whatnot. And there's AC. Well, they're more inverters, but kind of a lab test bench. I've worked with things that were these huge cabinets with 1,000 amp capacity. And they must have cost almost $1 million, at least a few $100,000 for testing all types of things when you do load tests and battery tests. And these things were nuts. But obviously, when we're talking about car audio in the home, no one's going to spend a couple $100,000 on that. So.
No, I think we.
Yeah, I think we're good. We're at the time when Ed needed to sign off anyway. So
Yep.
Thanks, Ed, again for taking the time out of your schedule, and Rob, thanks for running it. I know we had a couple hiccups, but everything's good. Thanks everybody in the chat room for hanging out with us and chatting. We appreciate that, and I guess we'll see y'all next week. We have a special guest on next week too, so we'll talk about that maybe at the beginning of the week once we get him the questions and make sure everything is good. So yeah.
Sorry for the videos, guys. What I messed up. I messed up real bad.
Sticking around, even though he's that's great. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm better heard than seen, anyways.
All right, cool guys. Thanks
Later.
again.